may I first introduce our session chair for the next session, Shri Dheeraj Rastogi sir. He is Executive Vice President Services in Goods and Service Tax Network, GSTN, Department of Revenue, Ministry of Finance. Dheeraj Rastogi has worked in various capacities in Customs, Central Excise and Service Tax Department at field level, systems and policy. Currently, he is on deputation to GSTN since April 2020 and responsible for services development, administration, HR, and data analytics. Lot of portfolios, sir, at GSTN. He is an engineering graduate from IIT Kanpur and has done a short-term course in use of IT in public facilitation from Duke University, USA. Welcome you, sir, to the dais as a session chair for the next panel. Now I welcome other panelists of this session. Shri Aditya Chabra, please come on to the dais, please. Thank you. Let's put our hands together. पीछे से तो आवाज ही नहीं आ रहा. Thank you. Miss Vrinda Bansode, ma'am, please come. Shri Avik Sarkar is joining online. And Shashank Mohan, he is also joining online. Shashank, yeah. Mr. Shashank Mohan. Over to you, sir. We have around 50 minutes, though it will be a little delayed, but I think it will be worth the discussion. Thank you.
So, am I audible? Yeah. So, since morning, a lot of is being discussed about data, how data can be useful and how it is being used. Many use cases have been presented. But at the core of it, there's a data which has in the custody of somebody, and therefore the issues relating to data governance and user ecosystem that uses it, they arise. For example, how to safeguard that privacy of the data, how to maintain transparency so that each individual user, whatever he needs, he gets that data, and whenever the time is ripe, at that time he gets the data. And associated issue with the privacy and transparency is the accountability also, as to if he gets that data, then for what purpose he gets that data, and he should be restricting to use of that data for that purpose alone. And if any deviation is there, then perhaps he should get it cleared from the user, from the originating agency as to whether that particular use for which he is trying to use that data is permitted or not. So a lot of issues pertaining to that arise. And for example, in GSTN also, it has been created as a special purpose vehicle by the government, looking into all these issues and also the issues that may arise, because in GST there are 37 partners. They would be for whom the data would be collected and who would be ultimately using that data. So by 37 are the core partners, in the sense that one is the union government, and then there are 36 states and the union territories for whom the data is there. And obviously a trust issue, the transparency, accountability, they are all at the core of it, because nobody would like their data to be misused or to be seen by somebody else. So it has been an experiment by the government through SPV, and so far it has turned out to be quite successful. It has addressed all these issues adequately, Now, around this, GSTN has developed an ecosystem of the users also. For example, we have GST Suvidha providers. They do the compliance on part of the businesses, and also ecosystem of the IRPs, who are actually the appointed by the government and who collect the data from the businesses for the purpose of generation of e-invoice and then pass it on to the government. And there are several stringent guidelines built behind them as to how much data they can do, till when they can preserve. For example, within 24 hours, they have to delete the data unless consented by the user. And if they give some data, some value add services to that, then only they can use it. Otherwise, they cannot store it. So stringent controls have been built. Now, expectation of the users also comes into play a lot of. It plays a lot of role here, because they would want, on one hand, they would want that they should be quite facilitated and they may not have to give the same data again and again. But at the same time, they would also want that their data should not be misused or put to a wrong use. As we feel as a user every day, that at least 4 to 6 calls you receive every day that kindly buy this, kindly invest here, which is a clear misuse of data. So going around this, now we have a panel on today where we have Mr. Aditya Chabda. He is a researcher at the World Bank, and he has done a lot of work in the AI. And he has a master's degree in economic and specializes in applying the AI and machine learning to do social economic development issues. And India is at the core of those issues and trying to overcome all those issues to move into the developed world. Then we have another panelist, Ms. Brinda. She is a partner in India Data Insight, which is of the Saptwa Consulting. And she leads data initiatives there regarding the social impact consulting in India. And she has conceptualized and developed open data portal, that India Data Insights, which is used by non-profit corporate CSR and donor ecosystem effectively. And we have Mr. Shashank Mohan. He is a program manager and Center for Communication Governance at the NLU Delhi. He is with the technology and society team, and his work primarily focused on the data production, data governance, surveillance, intermediary liability, and e-governance, etc. And he is interested in studying the effect of digitization and the internet on the human rights, specifically the rights to privacy and free speech, which seem to be in danger because of the data leakages all around. And Dr. Avik Sarkar, he is a member of GPAI and ISB Chandigarh. He is online, joining online. He is associated with the ISB and working in the teaching in data, emerging technologies and public policy. He has developed, he is heading the development of India Data Portal, a one-stop portal for analyzing and visualizing government data and working on the societal and policy aspects. Sure. Okay. Okay. So in the meantime, we can start discussing about the use cases that we have. So first of all, I would invite Sri Aditya Chabda to present his use case and also illustrate as to how the data issues have been handled there. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Am I audible? Yeah. So, hi everyone. I think I'm feeling a little out of place. Definitely less experience than most of the panelists here, and I'm definitely not a public policy expert. I'll just explain a little bit about what my background is and what my association with DataGovIn is. So it's a very special place for me, DataGovIn, and I'll explain why. So I'm a data scientist at the World Bank. It's been a few years since I've been working there. I also lead a small startup team which is focused on AI in Bangalore. We work with a lot of ex-Aadhaar UPI folks from Nandan Nilekani's team, Dr. Pramod Verma, etc. Right? And we're working on government data sets a lot. Like we're working on Kisan call center data sets. We're working with the Ministry of Agriculture, also with the Ministry of Education. We created bots for them as well. So that's the background that I'm coming from. I remember back in 2021, it was my first interaction with DataGovIn as a platform. I was working for King's College London, and we were looking at COVID impacts for business and for society. And I'm sorry to say this, we were scraping data from the MCA's website, ignoring the CAPTCHA, bypassing the CAPTCHA. Hope that doesn't get me in trouble. But now it's very encouraging to see that sort of data is also available through DataGovIn with a simple API. One thing that was concerning to me and another colleague of mine was that there was not enough documentation. Coming from a developer background from that community, we are used to looking at GitHub, we're used to looking at issues, comments, and like a thriving community around that. We were not able to find very good documentation around that initially. So one of the things that we saw as an opportunity was to create a library that people can use in Python and R, and we did that. We've received since then over 20,000 downloads of the library. So essentially 20,000 users have accessed the DataGovIn platform through our library. So what we tried to do was make it easy for people to just get started with it. We wrote a lot of documentation by ourselves as well. We told them how to get an API key and everything, and how to get started, how to search for resources, how to get the metadata for those resources, etc. And in doing so, I unofficially became like a custodian for DataGovIn. I didn't prepare any slides, but I probably could have created like a whole deck of slides just with the emails that I've received about questions from the community about is this data set there, is that data set there, is the server down, is this down, and I love to deal with them on a daily basis. So I get like a lot of queries. I'm an unofficial customer support executive on your behalf, essentially. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for inviting me. Yeah. So essentially, there are quite a few things that I've realized what the community cares about, right? And some of these things were very encouraging. I remember earlier when we started this API, there was a person from Urban Emissions, an NGO that uploads all of this emission data, pollution data freely. I helped them integrate these APIs into their platform. Earlier, they had to go every day and sort of download data from the IMD website. Now they were able to automate a lot of these workflows, right? Then I remember during COVID time, lots of people were building things. And now, if you think about developers, they don't want to look at a lot of documentation. They're used to pip install something or install something in the library and just get started with it. So they were used to that, and they came to this, and honestly, a lot of them thought this was an official repository. I did not often correct them, but sometimes I did. So they created a lot of assets around oxygen cylinders, around hospital beds, etc. Right? And there were lots of students doing research projects, lots of hackathons that were also using this. Right? So, on that note, I would like to say that some documentation, I think, needs to be enhanced on the DataGovIn's part as well. A lot of people spoke about metadata, and I think one point that I would like to add that perhaps belongs to the previous session about essentially AI uses is, and it's quite interesting, I recently saw an RFI, like a request for information by the US government, that's like just 2 months old, about March or April, that talks about not just making data ready for AI readable, it should not just about making it AI readable, but AI understandable. What that involves is like that you enrich the metadata, as lots of people said that. I think it's very encouraging to see that we're having this conversation here, and they are also having the conversation at the same time. So there's not much of a lag. I think for India, the scale of data that we have is much more than the United States has, for example. And I think this could, like, even for the data, we could have like a UPI or a Aadhaar moment soon, right? But it's all about making that ready for use, and we don't even know what use cases there might occur later on. Another small suggestion that I would have is we don't have a search API. Correct me if I'm wrong. Do we have an API for search? Do we have it now? Okay, so earlier I think back when we started there was no API for search, and that's like really essential. When you think about AI agents as AI assistants, what we would like to do for them is to sort of go to the web, crawl it, and get some data and summarize it for the user. And similarly, you could connect it to any data resources. For example, we do have bots that have connected to World Bank resources as well, and something for India as well. It would just help you find the right resource at the right time. It would help people avoid questions around discovery. Is the data set there? Is that data set there? I think that would really help automate a lot of workflow and help AI agents, not just users. So I think that standard for what that data quality is, it's surpassing what just users. It's also going to the point that we have to make sure it has a high enough standard to be operated by machines. Right? So I think that's all from my end. Please check out the repository. Please check out the package and hopefully use it. And yeah, thank you.
No, thank you for enlightening us about what is available and what more should be done about on data.gov.in. Now I invite Ms. Brinda for sharing her experience.
Thank you. I'm very glad to be here. And as I was telling ma'am earlier, this is probably one of the best events that I have attended in terms of the quality of conversation and the inputs being exchanged here. It's really heartening to see that we have access to people whose data we use on an everyday basis. So really happy to be here and thank you so much for inviting us. I'm from Sattva Consulting. We are a social impact consulting firm and we provide everything from research to advisory to monitoring, evaluation, etc. And typically our clients are either non-profit organizations or from the donor ecosystem, and that would include corporate CSR as well as large foundations, philanthropists, and we also work with various government bodies as well. So the use case that I'm going to talk about and present to you all is slightly different from what we have been hearing so far. We do have an open data portal called India Data Insights. It's indiadatainsights.com. You can take a look at it. And as we had discussed in the early part of today's session, what should be open public good versus what can be used for commercial purposes for keeping the effort sustainable is something that I think all of us running portals have been kind of trying to balance. So we also do that. We use a lot of socioeconomic indicators data which is openly available for non-profit organizations because they are a key stakeholder in our ecosystem. And the reason we set up that portal was precisely this, that we realized that now government is making a lot of data available. However, this data is dispersed across different websites and portals, and non-profit organizations especially are not really equipped to deal with it because they don't have resources, they do not have data scientists, they also don't have monetary resources to hire people to work with that data. So the idea was to bring most of the socioeconomic indicators that typically non-profit organizations working in the development sector would need in one place. So we did that and we set up this portal. The way we have structured this portal is we actually built a data warehouse. It's a Snowflake based data warehouse that we have built, because what we also realized looking at places like data.gov.in that only disparate data sets are not always useful. We wanted to make sure that this data can be used on an ongoing basis and also data sets are able to connect with each other. And that is where the idea of data warehouse came in, because what we do now is we download the data sets. We have developed our own formats. So one is cleaning, of course, but also storing it in those particular formats. That makes it easy for us to connect data sets from different ministries and different government portals. To give you an example, one of the frequent use cases for our users, which are, like I said, development sector professionals, is let's say they want to understand the development profile of a district. And they want multiple parameters like, let's say, water situation, education statistics, or even banking infrastructure, or things related to gender, all in one place for that district. We have made a one-click download available for every district in India. So users can go to the portal and you just have to select the district from the from the drop down, and you get a complete booklet that you can download. So we use Tableau for this, and it can be downloaded as a PPT by any NGO or any user for that matter, so that it's easier for them to look at the district development profile and identify which are the problems to attack here. And this is a very frequent use case with corporate CSR as well as philanthropists. So typically there are, I would say, two trends when philanthropists decide where they want to work. One is either they have a geography approach. So many of the UHNIs that we work with or large foundations, philanthropists have a stake in a particular area. For example, I'm from Rajasthan and therefore I want to run something in this particular district and help it develop. And I want to know what I should prioritize because there are so many issues. And again, using data, we are able to help them prioritize. The other approach sometimes, and this, by the way, geography approach is also very valid for corporate CSR because they have factories in various districts and they want to work around their factories. Again, having data pertaining to those areas is very, very useful for them. The other approach is some people are very passionate about a cause. So they say we want to work on malnutrition. And you tell us where is the problem most acute in India. So again, using these data sets which are made available by the government, we are able to pinpoint saying, okay, these are 5 districts where the problem is most acute. So maybe you want to prioritize. And therefore, using all of this data, what we have been able to do really well is, I would say, influence the philanthropic funding, CSR funding to go into areas and causes which really, really need them. So for example, we have been working with Niti Aayog and some of the other large foundations to set up Aspirational Districts Collaborative to help more CSR money and more development capital go to aspirational districts. And all of that has been possible using data because corporate people especially are very used to making decisions using data. And when the CSR law came in, initially there wasn't as much data available and the boardrooms really struggled to make a decision saying where should our CSR go. And by the way, CSR, as you know now, is about whatever latest data that we have available is around 26,000 crores per year. So although compared to the public spending by the government, it's a really tiny number. But then for many NGOs, this has really become their go-to source for sustaining themselves and sustaining their activities. So very, very important. And on that note, I just also wanted to say that one of the other data sets that we use very extensively is the CSR data set that comes from Ministry of Corporate Affairs. And we analyze CSR in depth. So again, in our data warehouse, we have downloaded and stored all the CSR data starting from 2014 for all the 20-30,000 companies that do CSR at a row level for each project, in which area have they spent, with whom have they worked, and all of that. And that has really been useful for companies to understand what their industry is doing, what their peers are doing, and also in terms of being able to collaborate with each other, because we are able to say, if you are working in this district, there are 10 other companies that are working in the same district, and would you like to do a collaborative project probably. So this is the, I would say, the use case that we have found for all the data that is available out there, which is to help people make right decisions when it comes to philanthropy, as well as help them collaborate with each other, prioritize the causes and the geographies that they want to fund. Coming to what we would like to see more of, I think I think all of those issues have been covered by all the previous panelists really, really well. So I wouldn't go too much into detail because I also know that I'm standing between you and lunch. So I'm not going to go into those problems again. There have been enough suggestions made here since morning, all of them really, really valid, and coming from people who have worked, I would say, in this space for a really long time. Because CSR did not come up earlier, maybe I'll just take a minute to talk about the CSR data set. And I don't know if the Ministry of Corporate Affairs is being represented here today, but that's a data set that is really useful for the entire industry. And by the way, we have also taken it abroad, in the sense that many times we get requests saying, what are American companies doing, for example, and using the same data set, we are able to tell them. We have done presentations in Europe, again to government authorities, talking about what European companies, for example, are doing in India by way of CSR. So there are many different ways that data is being used, but lots of issues with that data, and definitely more can be done. Coming to even the transparency issue, I think in terms of how that data is being collected from companies and how it is being disseminated by the ministry, I think many improvements are possible. And like I said, again, coming to the open data, OGD portal itself, like I said, disparate data sets have their own use, but what we have also found more useful is building a data warehouse and making sure that these become databases which are getting continually updated. We still haven't found a way of creating any kind of live data pipelines. So that's, I would say, far away for us also still. But happy to have conversations offline with anybody who would like to know more about how we have been able to connect, because these are discussions that we have had with other government bodies at different levels, including in Karnataka state where we are headquartered. Because even the government people most of the times find our portal useful because they are able to see all data sets in one place. So with state governments, we have done these presentations, especially on CSR initiatives of state governments. One of the things that we have been working with many different state governments is to help them build that connect between macro socioeconomic indicator data that they have and the CSR that companies are doing in their state, so that there is better match between where the needs are and where the money is going. So that's a little bit from my side, but I'm available, of course, after this as well. So would be happy to have any personal conversations with anybody who would like to know more. Thank you very much.
So it was wonderful listening about the CSR initiatives and as the how inputs are being provided for those CSR initiatives. Now I would like to invite Shri Shashank Mohan, is the program officer from the NLU, about how they feel about the data governance in the ecosystem.
Is it okay if I speak from here? It's more conversational. First of all, thank you so much to the Ministry of IT for inviting us. As Aditya said, this is not the rooms I'm typically sort of part of, so it's a real privilege. Thank you so much. I'm in a community of open data sort of creators and users, and I'm going to sort of maybe ruffle a few feathers here, so please, I want to apologize for that beforehand. But to sort of appease all of you, I'll start with some positives, right? I won't jump into the challenges directly. And I'm Shashank Sari. I'm a program manager at the Center for Communication Governance at the National Law University, Delhi. I have been personally working on data governance issues for the past 4 years, and we typically work on data governance, platform governance, and emerging technologies like AI. I would like to say, and it's been a great learning experience attending this, that there are that data is today powerful, right? There are sort of kind of erroneous euphemisms about data being oil. I don't agree with them, but we know the power data has. And unfortunately, a lot of the data economy and the power that data lies has been exercised by the private sector for a large purpose. And that's why initiatives like data.gov are so important to ensure that everybody, for all stakeholders, data is equally powerful and not just only for the private sector. I would like to say that talk about some of the benefits that we can see from open data. Of course, one of them, as I already mentioned, is shifting power structures from the private sector towards more uses for public benefit. I would like to say that it will definitely, as we ensure that data is accessible by all stakeholders, this will drive innovation, this will drive solutions, and we've heard some of these solutions since morning today, so that's definitely a benefit. Again, data is concentrated in the private sector. It should open up. It should sort of move from there to all of us as citizens. And I've heard the words accountability. I also want to add transparency to that. Oftentimes we don't know where our data is used and where it's collected. I think making data more open at least puts it out in the public domain, and we can see what data is collected and how it's being used, right? So those are some of the positives that we all know about making data more open. Our goal as civil society is to also point to some friction in data flow. So again, I'm coming to the point where all of you will disagree with me, but that's okay. I think I would like to start by talking about privacy and data protection, right? And yes, we have a personal data law now, we're waiting for rules to come out and its notification and operationalization. But you know, we know that we live in the world of big data and machine learning and AI, and we know that privacy harms or profiling can result from non-personal data, from data that's innocuous at the first, right? When you combine various data inputs together, you can make a pretty detailed profile about people. So we have to be mindful of those risks as we open up data. Open data, we know the benefits, but unless we have a mechanism where we create portals for grievances for people who get harmed by data at large, by actors who have malified intentions. I'm not talking about people in this room who are working towards public benefit, but with the technology, when it comes where there are positives, we know there will be negatives. People with malified intentions will use it wrongly. So we need to start creating portals where people can sort of draw grievances. And unfortunately, our personal data protection law might not serve that, because we're talking about data that's not necessarily personal, right? That law can handle that. But we have to start having a conversation about how privacy can even be impacted by non-personal data, by innocuous data. So that's one. I think the other one that we have been working on very closely for the past few years is the over focus on individuals when we talk about privacy and data protection. As data processing grows, as it becomes more complex, profiling doesn't only happen at the individual level. Communities can be identified and harm can accrue to different communities, right? There have been scholars, bona fide scholars, who, for example, in the US, just by looking at when taxi drivers make stops and their license plates that is public information, have identified for example, the religious ethnicity of those drivers, right, and places where they live. So I'm saying scholars, and this is not new studies; these are maybe already 10 years old. So I'm saying that we have to start having conversations about how to mechanize grievance redressal for people when they identify that harm has occurred. I think one of the biggest problems is we don't even know when privacy harms occur, right? Because we don't even know where data is coming from. And of course, open data initiatives will help draw transparency on that. I think something that Mr. Rastogi, you mentioned while sort of introducing this panel, and something that I was thinking through the day, that yes, we are in this room part of a great community, people using open data for public benefit. But how do we ensure that that data is not used for bad intentions, right? And I don't have immediate solutions, and that's why I think these kind of conversations are great to deliberate. But for example, and I'm not saying we should do what Europe is doing, but for example, Europe has the AI Act, where it sort of bans certain uses for AI, right? For example, you cannot use for social profiling or for social credit scoring, or for, you know, in some cases for FRT. So we need to start drawing some boundaries that if we are going to open so much data, and if it can lead to harm, what are the domains that we don't want data to be used for? What are the domains that end up harming people? And that's not our intention when we say data should be open, right? So, and again, I'm not going to give solutions. I am a regulatory policy guy, but I think in the scope of innovation, I'm not going to say that let's do A, B, C, D. Let's come to the solutions together. But what I'm trying to point to is the problems. And I think something I care deeply personally about, and I've been working at CCG for, is community building. And again, these kind of sessions really go a lot towards building a community of people who care about public benefits, and drawing out and equalizing power and transparency and accountability. But we won't get there if we don't start recognizing some of the problems in our assumptions. I'm just going to stop there by saying that I heard in the morning someone say, by the people, for the people. I absolutely like that, but we won't get there unless we start drawing boundaries and realize risks about open data. Thank you.
So, yeah. So thank you, Shashank, about the mention about the dangers that can be and how it should be handled through framing certain boundaries. Now, Dr. Avik Sarkar has joined with us, and he is from the ISB. So we would also like to hear about his use cases, or maybe how he has been feeling about this data governance in user ecosystem. Thank you.
Yes, so can you hear me? Okay, great. So I think thanks to all the speakers, it was really nice to hear about the data and open data ecosystem in India, which is really a vibrant one. We had the Indian School of Business, we had our India Data Portal, and prior to that, when I was part of NITI Aayog, we formed the National Data Analytics platform. We have data.gov.in, which is a platform for open data. But then often we see there are some of the challenges that Brunda talked about, that some of this data are in different formats and they don't talk to each other. So bringing them to a common platform, cleaning them becomes quite an important aspect before they are ready for the purpose of analysis. And that's a very good value add that is required from a lot of the players in the ecosystem. So the data.gov.in has been an initiative for about 22 years now. We started in 2012, and it's great to see it has come such a long way. The objective was more on the part of transparency, but now when we look at data sharing, it's a lot from the purpose of AI. So what are the additional things that we need for the purpose of AI? A lot of the data which is in public domain in, say, data.gov.in or many of the portals like, say, what Brunda was talking about, or NDAP, or India Data Portal, or How India Lives, a lot or all aggregate level data. But when we are looking at artificial intelligence application development, we have to look at more granular level data, which is good to share, but also brings in the very pertinent issue of data privacy, which has to be considered. So I think what really needs to be done at this point is to develop a data governance framework which will take this aspect into consideration, and we can share data onto the India Datasets platform once it is launched. A lot of this data which will help AI development, be it healthcare data, be it financial data, be it legal data or agriculture data. And there are a lot of ministries which are taking their first steps. There are about 6-7 ministries which are in the process of appointing chief AI and data officers, and they will be driving the AI roadmap specific to the ministries that they are working there. Also NIC is looking at placing data scientists, maybe a small team of data scientists in different ministries who will look into their data and start working on that. So India is a chair this year on Global Partnership for AI, and one of the projects that the Global Partnership for AI is driving is the role that government can play in making the AI data ecosystem more robust. Bhashini is a very good example, and I think there was a session on Bhashini earlier in the day, which is trying to democratize Indian language data sets, Indian language models, and a lot of these things in the ecosystem. And what we have to do is really do a public-private partnership with private players, the academia and government playing hand in hand to achieve some of these aspects, because a lot of this data lies in boundaries with the private players, some lies with the government, and academia can play a role in cleaning the data and making them available in some place. That's actually the model that has been developed in the US. You see today the advancement of English as a language is primarily because DARPA has given funds, and the US universities have developed large data sets, be it Cornell, Stanford, or Princeton, large data sets in English, which have taken English way ahead of all the other languages. I think we need to do things in similar manner for India, and Bhashini, what they are doing with AI for Bharat, which is placed in IIT Madras, and the Indian language technology centers in IIT Bombay have taken substantial good steps in that direction. I think that needs to be continued into other domains, be it healthcare data, be it government data, take access to the data, ensure that they are AI ready. And when I talk about a data set which is AI ready, don't just need the data, we need the annotation on top of the data. So if you are sharing, say, a pictures of a million pictures, you need to annotate and tell them what this picture is on. Say, if you are taking agriculture pictures of say paddy and wheat, because that can help identify, you also need to tell them that this is a picture of a paddy plant which is say 3 weeks old, or this is something which is 2 months old, because that will help then for an AI system to learn automatically how does a paddy plant look when it is 2 months old versus when it is 2 weeks old. I think this sort of annotation is something that has to be done by people in the ecosystem. That is where we are looking at a big jump from what data we are talking about now, open data, to annotation data. And this is like we are talking about a huge amount of data sets. So again, taking the example for Vashini has a system called Vashadan, where people can contribute data on their own. What we call is like crowdsourcing of data. I think crowdsourcing is one approach where you can take people to take pictures of their farms, pictures of the produce, and at which phases they are, quality marking and annotate the data. But when crowdsourced data comes, it also brings in another challenge. It brings in the challenge of quality. So how do you manage that quality? So there has to be a body who will monitor this entire process and ensure that quality of this data that has been uploaded on the data set platform is good, so that it can help in inputting the system. So we are talking about a new governance system. I think that METI along with this open data group at NIC should spearhead, where they play a role in managing this entire ecosystem. Say, we talk about sharing of, say, agriculture data or say healthcare data. So samples are taken, pictures are taken, annotated and put, where there will be another level of people who will then monitor this data and check the quality and then approve them. And then there can be different mechanisms of who can get access to these data sets for the purpose of developing AI. So there is this mind shift that we have to do from data for transparency to data for AI, and that's the area where I particularly am heavily invested and working on. I think this is something that we should take as the next step, as the India AI mission has got approved earlier this year in March, and there's a huge commitment by the government to take the AI agenda forward, and we need help from all of you to work collaboratively to make it happen. I know you didn't have a lunch yet, so I will not take longer and maybe end my discussion here. Thank you again.
So thank you, Dr. Avik. Now, just to sum up, what are the takeaways that we have from this session? First of all, as we came to know that not only that data that we have, it should be AI readable, but it should also be AI understandable also, as also has been emphasized by Dr. Avik Sarkar, that not only you have a photo of paddy, but you should also have a sub description also with it as to how old it is, sort of those things. And also we came to understand about a wonderful project where we not only know, for example, in the area of CSR, as to what are the causes for which some CSR can be done, what are the geographies where it can be done, what are the needs of that area, and what are the resources that we have and how to match them. So that kind of a wonderful work could be there if we use the data effectively. Then we have the views about the personal data protection law, and as to how we need to define certain boundaries within which the data should be available and how it should be used. And lastly, with Dr. Avik Sarkar, we also were made aware as to how the data governance framework should be there and how it should be more and more liberalized and used for democratic use of the data. So now at the end, I would invite if we have any questions from the hall about with the panelists, please shoot them. So it seems that lunch is very near, and the session.
We are not breaking for lunch.
We are, yeah.
We are definitely not breaking for lunch before 10 more minutes.
Thank you.
I really thank you, sir, and thank all the panelists. May I request Sanjay Mahindru, please come forward, Director, OGD Division, to felicitate our guests, sir. And panelists, if you can just come with, there's no enough space here, so if you can come in the front. Ma'am, be careful. We thank you all for taking out time. We are very thankful to Mr. Avik Sarkar who has joined online. We'll see that how this reaches you. We'll send it across. Thank you, sir. Thank you for being online. Ma'am, please come forward for a group photograph. DP sir. Sanjay, group photograph. Photograph, group photograph. Let's have a group photograph. Ritu.